Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols having been observed, let me say it that way. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We're going to have a lively panel just before the lunch break, so I hope that you'll bear with us. We have an illustrious panel this morning, who I'll introduce shortly. First, I need to make a short announcement. We were going to hear an address from the Honourable Daniel Osuko, but unfortunately his flight was delayed, and he is en route from the airport, but we're not sure what time he's going to arrive. So it may be that during the session, we actually put things on hold to give him an opportunity to address you all. But please rest assured he will be here for the next 2 days if there's any questions you want to put to him or any meetings you want to have with him. Okay, that being said, allow me to introduce our panelists. We have with us today Mr. Yusuf Abubakar, Chairman of the Kaduna Electricity Distribution Company. Mr. Mokhtar Tijani, Special Assistant to the President on Power. Mr. Usman Gur Mohammed, Interim Managing Director, Chief Executive of TCN. Mr. Chinadu Egbo, Managing Director.
He's the Managing Director, confirmed. You just introduced.
Oh, okay. Apologies. Managing Director confirmed. I took it from your bio that they sent me, so apologies for that. And I should know he's from my former brother from the ADB. Manager confirmed. Okay, so then we have Mr. Chinadu Igbo, Managing Director, Chief Executive of the Niger Delta Power Holding Company Limited. Mr. David Passe, Development Manager, East and West Africa for Building Energy. And Mr. Vangelis Kamaris, International Operations Director for MECTA West Africa, a Tier 1 EPC contractor. To set the scene for this panel, we are going to invite Mr. Mokhtar Tijani to give us an overview of the Nigerian power sector over the last 20 years and to date.
Thanks. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Mrs. Ojo. I'll do a quick scene-setting overview of the Nigerian power sector. Quite broad, here's just a list of things we'll be going through, one after the other. It'll just be 10 minutes, so there are only about 20 slides, so just follow me through. So, for the introduction, as we know, the power sector really hinges on a lot of other segments of the national GDP of any country, and even in Africa. So getting the power sector right really has a knock-on effect on other industries, agriculture, etc. So the purpose of this presentation will provide an overview of the Nigerian electricity supply industry over the past 20 years and a little bit beyond. The vision of the NESE is to adequately generate power, effectively transmit the power, and efficiently distribute the power. So this picture is just it could come at the end also, but it's just a broad view of what the different agencies in the sector and their functions. I'll put it back up at the end. I don't want to spend too much time on this. So on a historical perspective, this goes beyond the past 20 years. I mean, about 60 kilowatts has been generated in Nigeria as far back as 1896, all the way up to 1972, where the Nigerian Dams Authority was merged with the Electricity Corporation of Nigeria to form NEPA, Nigerian Electricity Power Authority, which we'll see was later unbundled in the privatization process. So more recently, there was a National Electric Power Policy in 2001, which set the path for the privatization. Going on, the inauguration of the National Integrated Power Projects, the MD is here, he will give us some more information on that. In 2005, we had the Act, the Electric Power Sector Reform Act, which set the stage for the establishment of the regulator and privatization of the unbundled, the 18 successor companies, 6 generation companies, 11 distribution companies, and 1 transmission company still under the purview of the government. Majority of the generation and distribution companies are now owned by private individuals and operated by them also. So more recently, like I said, in November 2013, the unbundled companies were handed over to the private entities, and Kaduna Disco was the last one to be handed over in 2014. The chairman is here. He'll speak a little bit more on his experience. And all the way to last year when the Minister of Power, Works and Housing declared the eligible customer regulation. I will speak on that as one of the opportunities in the Nigerian power sector. So here is just a list of the stakeholders in the Nigerian electricity supply industry, and most of them are here well represented. Same here is just a continuation of the list. So I'll go through the three major segments in the sector: generation, transmission, and distribution, and what we have in Nigeria and some potential opportunities. Starting with generation, we have about 25 generation plants. 3 of them are hydro, 23 are thermal. We have the National Integrated Power Project that was conceived in 2014. The plan was to build 10 thermal power plants along with some transmission and distribution infrastructure. And then the recently completed Azura power generation plant in Edo State is the first privately project financed IPP in the country. So there are a lot of opportunities in the power sector in generation segment. Recent policy directives such as the mini-grid and the eligible customer regulation have opened up the market for more entrants to generate power and sell it directly to consumers. Now for transmission company of Nigeria, the MD is here, also the chairman of the West African Power Pool, and they run the entire high voltage network of Nigeria, the 330 and 132 kV, and they're the link between the generation and distribution. They're responsible for ensuring the stability and safety of the grid. So under the TCM, we have the TSP, which is the transmission service provider, the system operator, and the market operator. So here's just a map showing the blue lines are the 330 kV lines, and the black ones are the 132 kV lines. The MD is here, like I said, he will give you a bit more detail. So there's some opportunities also in power transmission. I mean, a lot of the lines are being reinforced and dualized to improve reliability on those areas, and also for ancillary services. There's a lot of work being done by the TCN to have N-1 redundancy on every line they supply. Finally, the distribution sector. So there are 11 distribution companies in Nigeria. I'll have a map coming up to show you the geographical spread. So there's the last mile, they're the ones that deliver power to your homes, businesses, etc. And they consist of the low voltage, 33 kV down to 0.415 kilovolts. And they also do retail services. They're the ones that interact with the customers day to day for payment. So here's the map I spoke about earlier of the 11 distribution companies and the geographical spread they cover. So there's some opportunities in distribution, as I said, for transmission and generation. There's still a fair amount of ATCC losses, so a lot of room to invest to cover those gaps. And also there's a recently launched meter asset provider regulation that I'll speak about it later in the slides, that intends to allow more funds coming into the distribution companies in partnership with them, so we can get more meters out to Nigerians. Then there's the Rural Electrification Agency, and they are tasked with providing power to the rural dwellers. About almost half of Nigerians don't have access to electricity at all. So the Rural REA is working assiduously to come up with incentives to ensure these population are also given access to power. So there are a few incentives implemented by the REA, incentives of the federal government I've listed as the mini-grids, which the regulation by the regulator has protected investors in the mini-grids. If you're doing a mini-grid less than 100 kilowatts, you just need a permit and you're able to do the mini-grid, and it protects you in the event that the disco comes to that area. Also, the adjacent economies, which intends to provide reliable power to economic clusters to help improve the productivity and even the entire GDP of the country. That has started in about 3 or 4 locations. And energizing education seeks to provide also reliable, uninterrupted power to the 43 federal universities in the country. The first phase of that has also started. Now, more recently, just 3 recent interventions I will highlight. The panelists also have a lot more things they will speak about onto why the environment is more conducive for investments in Nigeria. So the meter asset provider regulations, like I said, the plan is to allow private investors in partnership with the DISCOs provide meters for consumers. The eligible customer regulation, the Minister of Power has the power given to him by the Act, Section 27, to provide, to declare a group of customers or customer eligible to buy power directly from a power generator. And also there's the Power Sector Recovery Program, which is a series of policy interventions which seek to reset the power sector and restore it back to financial viability over the next few years. Thank you. Thanks. Sorry. Need this for questions.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mukhtar. I think we got a very general overview of the last 20 years. Now I want to dig a bit deeper. So I turn to my panel. Chiedu, you have had a long and illustrious career in the power sector, looking at it from the legislative side, from the operations side. Can you put some flesh on the bones on the overview that we just heard from Mukhtar?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Mukhtar has set the tone for the presentation, and I think he's done a very good job giving us an overview. But just to say that from his presentation and what has actually happened on the ground, there has been a very bold step on the part of government. I'm sure some people would agree with me and some people might not agree, but let's just go back to 1998. We had perhaps about 6,000 installed capacity. Today we have well over 12,000 installed capacity. So that's double the capacity we had as at that time. As at 1998, we had just one dominant player in the sector, and a vertically integrated company, the old National Electric Power Authority from the presentation. They were only the ones providing generation at the time. But the government also thought it was necessary to have private investment. And what they did was to quickly amend the laws that gave NEPA monopoly. And that's how you saw the first phase of IPPs coming in, the 270 megawatts by Enron and brought over by AES. That is spent now, having performed for the number of years they were engaged under the PPA. We'll have the JVIPPs, the joint venture IPPs, the AGIP coming in with 450 megawatts, and we had Shell coming in with about 650 megawatts, and of course the Ibon Power. So all those steps led to this first phase of IPPs, but you now have the holistic reform in the electric power policy and the Act, which of course gave rise to private investments that we now have the holistic privatization of the sector to allow private investment, because the whole idea is to anchor development in the sector on private investment. And we might have some challenges now, but that again has brought in some private investment. I saw the Azura sponsors here. That gave birth to Azura, the likes of Azura, that gave birth to the private investors in generation, private investors in distribution like Hamisu here present with us. So there's been some bold step by the government to ensure private investment and increase capacity in the sector. We at NIPP, that's my company implements NIPP. Again, government thought at the time of carrying out the reforms, there was need to increase capacity to do some intervention. And then they came up with the 5,000 megawatts. Now, design capacity, now we've delivered well over 3,000 megawatts of that, and we'll continue to do more. So government, there's a lot of work ongoing. There are challenges. I'm sure we deal with that here. There are challenges, but it's a work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A work in progress is how we finish with, on that point. I'd now like to say, well, Nigeria took the bold step with privatization and the unbundling of the sector. I'd like to ask our panelists, do we think this was good for Nigeria? Usman, let me start with you.
Thank you, Madam. You know, I worked in the power sector from the beginning of the reform of the power sector. In fact, the first private sector intervention in the Nigeria electricity was the revenue cycle management, where three of us were the one that conceived the revenue cycle management, and I was the secretary of the revenue cycle management. That was the time when companies like Manitoba Hydro, Lisa, Global Utilities, Rural Maintenance, and Alpha Consortium came to the power sector to support the sector in recovering its revenue. That project took place, and it actually helped in significantly changing the narrative in terms of revenue collection before I left to African Development Bank. After I left the African Development Bank, I think when the privatization was eventually concluded, I was working with the African Development Bank. But transmission company was agreed that it will not be fully privatized, but it will be run by a private sector. That was how private sector was brought in to take over the running of the transmission company. Eventually, after 4 years of the private sector intervention in the transmission company, I was asked to come and assist in restructuring the transmission company to put it in a place where it can support and deliver its duty under the power sector reform. I am currently the managing director of transmission company and also the chairman of the executive board of West African Power Pool. The secretary general of WAP is here. He's here. Kisengi is here. What I want to say clearly is that having worked on all sectors, I worked 9 years in the African Development Bank, where we work in various parts of Africa. One thing that I can say very clearly is that, yeah, there are several challenges, big challenges, but we are living. If you look at in the last 1.5 years, you will discover that generation has significant challenges, meaning we have serious problem in generation. The generation was barely around 3,000, 3,500. Now generation is about 7,000, and when we finish Azura, it will go up to 7,450. And several other ones are coming, like the what do you call it? The Black Rhino, the Ajip that's in Opai, and several other ones, including the Zungeru that is going to be completed next year. So we are making progress. Now, in terms of transmission, when I was asked to come in, the capacity of transmission was only 5,500. As of December, when we did the last simulation, the capacity of transmission was 7,124. So we are making progress and making progress. Now, what are the private sector opportunities, particularly in transmission, where I head? When we came in, we tried to look at how we can raise investment in transmission and build the capacity of transmission network. We're actually looking at put N-1 capacity in terms of line and substation all over the country. We also are looking at putting a functional SCADA so that we have a grid that works. We also look at the possibility of stabilizing the frequency to make it consistent with what is obtainable in other West African sub-regions. On that regard, we look at all the opportunities of raising money, including working with private sector. The challenge we had when we came in, that was in February last year, was that we couldn't easily raise money through contractor finance to expand the transmission network because of the liquidity of the sector. So what we did was to meet with the Ministry of Finance and start an agreement with them to see how we can raise money through multilateral and bilateral relationship. Now, on that note, I want to tell you that we have raised significant amount. We've raised $1.57 billion, and we have changed the implementation structure of TCN, changed also the procurement system, because we do now dual system where we do pre-qualification before we do the tender, and we change the qualification system in such a way that only people who are capable of doing work that can win our contracts. So we have advertised. So if you check throughout newspapers, you will see we are advertising what we are doing to expand the transmission network in order to put N-1 capacity. Now the next thing we are doing as part of this program that we have, funding we have, We also have about $50 million for preparation of new projects. So we are preparing new projects under which we are going to use contractor finance. And what we are doing is that we are going to de-risk the project. One of the key challenges of building transmission network in Nigeria is the issue of right-of-way. Mm-hmm. So we are going to take away the right-of-way from the prospective investors, and then we TCN are going to put in the structure that we are going to guarantee the performance of the investment. Meaning we are going to de-risk it. We don't want to use what you call sovereign guarantee because of the problem of going to National Assembly, and we are going to structure it. And we are putting a mechanism in the last 1 year to be able to do this. To do this. So the first PPP we are going to launch is going to be Benin Omotosho double-circuit cord line. We are going to launch it. Before the end of this year, you are going to see that project coming on board. And from there, we will now test our capacity to be able to expand the grid using the private sector window. I think for now, let me stop here. But I also want to tell you that for we in TCN, we are working very hard to ensure that WAP is not just seen to exist, but WAP is also a business. Because transmission, power flow in West Africa have to move. In reality, in West Africa, Nigeria has comparative advantage in the sense that we have abundance of gas. So we should be able to generate electricity cheaper. So we are building new lines that are also extending from Nigeria to several of the West African West African countries. And that's why we are building the NOTCO. We are building the median backbone that will run from Shiroro to Cote d'Ivoire. We are also building the second coastal line, which the study is almost concluded. So this is what we are doing. Thank you.
There seems to be a lot going on. So thank you very much, Usman. As you can see, we are now speaking to the challenges and opportunities. The word challenge has been used several times this morning. I'd now like to turn to our developers and tell us, what do you feel are the main challenges when you enter the market in Nigeria? There's always a lot of optimism when it comes to Nigeria that is then seen to be tempered by nervousness. So can I ask Vangelis Kamaris from MECTA to come back to us on that point?
So good afternoon. Just to start and continue what the previous gentleman was saying, indeed, over the last few years, we realized that there's been some improvement on the governance stage, transparency stage. Indeed, TCN is doing some good work, trying to implement on a fast-track basis some things that most likely should have been done a long time ago. Niger Delta Holdings Company is also trying to make things happen following the privatization that is on hold. We realize that 3 out of the 10 assets of the government are getting close to financial closure, and it's likely that the private sector will take them over, which is also a tough job to be done under the circumstances. However, we need to acknowledge and be pragmatic and realistic that still, when it comes to the international investors, international community, commercial banks, lenders, developers, currently there is some skepticism, there is some, let's say, slight lack of confidence in what happens in Nigeria at the moment. Mm-hmm. And this is evident from the number of projects being developed as we speak. Only very few make it through. Everybody knows Azura, it took them a very long time to come on board. That is an excellent development for Nigeria, because we have been always thinking that if Azura makes it, we can easily copy-paste what Azura did and see more power generation coming on board. The problem, and this is, I think, this is what we should look into critically today and try to explain and show the way forward. There are restraints, there are issues in the whole value chain, power value chain. That means starting from the fuel supply. When it comes to the gas supply, Nigeria is lucky enough to have abundant resources in gas and fuel. Everybody knows that. Yeah. However, distribution network of the gas is facing some challenges, as everybody says. Power generation companies are facing difficulties. Mm-hmm. Tariffs are not cost reflective. Collections are an issue. Distribution companies are suffering. So Transmission, as we said, still major challenges, even if there are obvious improvements. Ability of the government to secure payments, this is always the biggest issue for all developers and contractors, to secure payments and guarantee. There are some tools which are being used, either a PCOA or the PPAs, and recently the PRGs for World Bank and all that. However, we really need to see that there is a proper master plan being developed very quickly. We need to see that it's not only TCN working, is following a real plan, but we should see initiatives being taken and clear steps being taken in all aspects of the value chain. Tariffs have to be discussed. Distribution companies we need to find solutions so they can be sustainable, because they are not sustainable, and I think the director for Kaduna can talk about that. And federal government of Nigeria, embed, bulk trader, the whole mechanism needs to provide comfort to the international investors so they come to Nigeria, because let's not really make it somehow sounds not so great, but Nigeria is a big country, everybody knows that. The power deficit is there, the opportunities are there. So, and I believe most of the people coming to this panel and attending this session believe in Nigeria, that's why we're there.
Precisely.
In our case, that's why we have an office in Nigeria, we're pursuing project in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So things need to be done. As we stand, not much is happening in terms of regaining the confidence, and this is evident. And as we were saying before, if you ask any investor, developer, whatever it is, for Nigeria at the moment, what do you think is going to happen in the next few years? What will be the opportunities for investors in the next few years? They might mention one or maximum two major thermal projects. Don't ask me the reasons.
Okay.
They might say that out of the 12, 14 solar power projects that got PPA, but there were, again, let's say some challenges and change of plans and adjustments, very few will possibly make it with the revised tariffs and all that. And we see some major opportunity in the off-grid sector, because this is a more pragmatic, realistic approach under the circumstances and the constraints of the value chain that we were saying before. Just to say that REA, the way we look into that, the experience we had with REA, they're doing an excellent job. They have a real plan, a strategic commitment to make things happen, and various projects, embedded kind of generation, captive power generation based on the new legislation allowing this to happen, with off-takers, industries, industrial parks, and all that. This is how it seems to be the situation as we speak. Objective is to see in a year or 2 years from now that the right context is in place, so you see more solar power plants be in Nigeria. It's not nice that there's no a single solar power plant in Nigeria as we speak.
Okay.
This is an issue.
I can see your fellow panelists nodding their head, shaking their head, so let's hear what some other people have to say on the point. Thank you very much. Yusuf, I can see you being quite vigorous during Vangelis's answering.
I substantially endorse what he has said in terms of what needs to be done. It is true that Nigeria has taken the first necessary step of unbundling and also enacting the reform law and also doing the privatization. But that in itself is not enough. That is just the first step that is required. What you need is the discipline to go through the process of the reform and allowing the market to work, and also the sanctity of contract and all the representation that government has made to investors to make sure those things are respected. And what we find as operators is that government has not exhibited the right kind of discipline in ensuring that those painful process, we see them through. Where there are a lot of agitation, government would easily cave in and look for the shortcut, and shortcut doesn't work. What you require is understanding that the whole sector, there is a value chain, from the gas supplier to the consumer. Power flows from one side and then payment flows from the other side. And you have to deal with the sector as a whole, holistically. You can't be looking at the sector segmentally. Once you are doing that, there will be a lot of distortion and there is no comfort. It is easy for government to look at donor agencies and multilateral funding, but then that is not the kind of funding that would give us the kind of growth and investment within the sector. We have to make sure that we have commercially viable projects that are bankable, and our project has to be based on things that are certain. There has to be certainty. People don't like unpredictability and lack of certainty. And what has been happening, even some of the initiatives that we have seen, we have a regulator, but we would want a regulator that is very strong, balanced, and objective. And also the consultative process should be such that it's very robust, so that when you are coming with any kind of solution or regulation, it is one that does not create more problem, but one that would help in smoothing what is happening. For example, a lot of the things that has happened, if you look at it, they are more of cannibalization of our own businesses. For example, before now we had CABNI, now we have MAP. We also have issues of tariff. We also have our capex, and all these things you don't have clarity. And once you don't have clarity, it becomes very difficult for us to plan. And unlike government, companies are not based on, their funding doesn't come from appropriation. What you do, you get your funding either from equity or from lenders. And lenders want to see some clarity, and they also want to see what their return on investment is going to be. At the end of it all, there has to be some level of accountability in terms of the return. So what I would like to see moving forward is closer collaboration of all the key stakeholders within the sector, and also seeing each intervention as to how it relates to the overall enhancement of the sector, not episodical intervention that is limited in terms of its impact. We have had this privatization for the last 5 years, and because we have not taken certain decisions that we are supposed to take, now if we decide to take them, it's going to be much, much costlier than if we had taken it at the time that we are supposed to do. So sometimes government focuses on the financial cost, but for power sector, the cost is beyond just the financial cost. You have bigger economic and social costs that government should factor in, and we need to take some of these decisions like yesterday, because time is moving and we are not moving at the pace that we are supposed to.
Would you say that, your points are obviously fair and valid, would you say that there's anything to congratulate the government on in the steps they're taking in privatization? Apart from the challenges that have been mentioned, there's obviously been some progress. So would you say there are things that the government can be congratulated on? David?
Yeah, so the step that Nigeria has taken so far has been valid and promising. What is really missing now is to have a clear plan of the way forward. On the investor and the IPP standpoint, the 14 solar PPA that has been in a way moving forward are not getting since 2016 any traction. There's no, as the panel was saying, no project on ground now. And on the investor standpoint, there's really no clarity which can be a potential plan for long-term or medium-term investment in Nigeria. On top of the bankability of the framework,
I think we have a bit of a technical issue with David's mic. I don't know if there's anyone there can help.
Can you hear me? Okay. The creditworthy of the off-taker and the overall type of sovereign guarantee that in a various form the government can put forward. We really need to understand over these 30%.
David, sorry to interrupt.
Director, sorry, you're the chairman.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Director.
Okay. So what I was saying is that it's really key to have a view on the next step and the plan on what is going to happen for the investor to actively invest in Nigeria. The plan to get 30% of renewable that Nigeria put in place by 2030 would be really key and really important to be properly deployed with allocation and timing, a bankable framework, and everything shall work holistically together to really attract investment on the private sector.
Okay, thank you very much. Could we have a very quick 5-minute response from government in order to allow us to put some questions to members of our audience, having heard your comments today?
Thank you very much. Yes, I work for government, and I will not say that the government have no issues. Of course, we do have issues, but you know, when you are talking about tariff setting, what is a tariff? Tariff is a function of the cost of generation of the electricity, transmission, distribution, the profit that the owners are going to make, and also the losses that are in the system. Government is a continuous process. You remember this government that is implementing the current reform is a government that took over from the previous government. And the previous government was the one that actually came up with the term in 2015. They themselves, when the first election, they decided to change the goalpost. They suspended aspect of the tariff. Now, the problem is that this asset has been taken by private sector, and the asset has been run by private sector for 4.5 years. The losses has increased. Government also have to be mindful of the interests of the of the population. I can tell you clearly, when I was in government, in the African Development Bank, we actually advised Nigerian government on how to support them to move out of this cycle of low tariff, lack of cost-reflective tariff. And we advised that let the government provide a window for the private sector, either through what we can call a bond, to support the private sector to be able to raise money so that they can invest in the network, reduce the losses so that we can have cost-reflective tariff. At that time, I can clearly tell you the executive agree, but when we went to the parliament, they disagree. But to tell you that things are changing, do you know the government, both the executive and the legislature, have agreed now that government can support the distribution network to expand and to be able to meet the need? Because whether you like it or not, power is a function of connected load and generated load. If you have capacity to generate 7,000 megawatt as we have, and the distribution capacity is only 4,500. It's only 4,500 you can generate. You cannot continue to sign new PPAs when you don't have capacity to peak. That means you're going to increase government contingent liability when you cannot peak those loads. And that is why we are working tightly to convince all the policymakers, and they're listening to us now, that they need to work with the owners of the distribution companies to see how investment can get to the distribution companies so that we can expand their capacity so that we can have more IPPs, more generation coming to Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chinedu, have you
Let me just add,
very quickly.
From the policy perspective and also from operational perspective that I'm involved in. First, policy perspective, I'm very much aware that the government is doing a whole lot of work to reset the market. And we have to understand this. Before 2013 November, the market was run by government. So we're in transition. With the wholesale privatization we did, the private sector came in, there were bound to be challenges. Even the World Bank admits that. But the issue is, how do we resolve these challenges? It's been efforts at tariff setting and taking back the tariff, and this government came in 2015, got the tariff back. Unfortunately, things happened in 2016 again, with the level of gas supply and the level of generation, which messed up the whole tariff. That again is being looked at. But for the time being, what is government doing? First, like Mukta pointed out, there is a power sector recovery plan, which they are working with the World Bank. The work is ongoing on that with the World Bank to reset the market on that basis. There is also in the interim, what's happening on the distribution side? Collection efficiency, lack of metering. The government has said, we'll come up with, through the regulator, come up with a meter asset provider regulation, which allows the private sector to come in and see that as a business to help meter that's ongoing. The government, the revenue was very short in the market. Government again intervened directly, bringing out some money, 7 billion, and at least for 2 years, pending when the market stabilizes, to ensure that at least we, myself and the rest of us in generation, at least we cover our gas. We are paid. Before then, we were getting like 30% of our invoices paid. Now we get about 90% of our invoices paid, which is another process. So the government is not just sitting back. Government is doing a whole lot of work to reset the market. But on our own part, while the government is working on distribution, because the market is the issue now, they're trying to help distribution and the collection officials. We're also part of government. We're making significant investment. In addition to what Eugene just said that about government investment, the NIPP have done massive investment in distribution to ensure that they're able to offtake the stranded power. We have 7,000 availability now out of the 12,000 megawatt, 7,000 are ready to go capacity, but we could do about 4,000 or 5,000. But we're trying to ensure, okay, what's the problem? The bottlenecks in distribution, we're investing. I have well over 70 projects in substations and distribution lines at 3 kV. We have completed, we're commissioning to ensure, again, that we improve the capabilities of the distribution companies to offtake load. So a lot is happening. So I don't agree with David that there is no clear plan. There is a clear plan, and where the government is working towards that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. So we hear on one side there's no clear plan, on the government side there is a clear plan. So I open it up now to you, ladies and gentlemen. Do you have any questions for our panelists based on what you've heard this morning?
Good afternoon. My name is Romundaka Wanodi, ZKJ Energy Partners. The question is for both the chairman of Kaduna Distribution Company and then the government side. So we have 4,500 megawatts of distribution capacity. The government has identified the gap and would like to help the distribution company. How and what mode are you looking to have this investment made in the distribution company? And the government had also approved about 71 billion naira for such investment. Was there consultation with the distribution companies, and are you looking at it as equity, or how can one actually get into this distribution space to help? Thank you.
Very good.
No, you start.
Okay. First of all, I want to tell you that government owns 40% of the shares of the distribution company. So the distribution company is not 100% owned by the private owners. Actually, the thinking was then that government will be a passive investor, so that when those companies improve in the private sector hand, then gradually the government will ease out by selling those shares, possibly through the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and then exit the distribution DC. But you see, as I told you at the last DC, between tariff and investment, which one comes first? Which one comes first? The point is that if you have a network that has been taken over and has been run for several, Rumundaka, you are the former, this, you know it. You ran this business for several years. The aggregate technical and commercial loss was about 50%. You have run it, and then after running it for several years, the tariff has not come, because government also decisions also interested in the welfare of the people. Now the previous government decided to suspend the reform. Granted, this one that came also, they are very slow, to be honest. There's no truth about it. But the question now is that we have laws that are very high, that if you translate it to the people, it becomes a problem. So what do we do? What we need to do is to have investment come in. And that is the reason why the government has agreed to take the $1 billion from the World Bank to see how they can support the liquidity of the sector. And that's why the government has also agreed to provide this 72 billion naira investment in the distribution network, to see how we can work with them to see how we can solve the problem of the distribution network. So I don't know what we can do better than this. Then the tariff can come in. But if you say you want to translate the tariff immediately on the people, I am sure that there are some areas in Nigeria that cannot be able to pay it.
Usman, thank you very much.
So, Rumo, thank you very much for the question. For some of us who do not know Rumo, he was the immediate past managing director of Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading. So he's part of us, he's part of the system. But just to add, at NIPP, we have massive investment in distribution as well. So how we treat those investments, we have well over $1.5 billion investment already in different distribution companies, and we're still making more distributions. Our projects were not treated as part of the assets privatized to the distribution companies. Our projects are supposed to be transferred on some bilateral arrangement with the distribution companies. We have some asset transfer arrangements. We're negotiating that with the distribution companies. And of course, we do not expect bullet payment, but we expect payment for the asset because the investment is being made by government, and NDPC, my company, is owned by the 3 tiers of government, not just the federal government. So we have to recover the money for the government, but over time. Government cannot fold its arms and say we are privatized, so the private sector go and get the money. The sector is not very bankable as it is now, so government is intervening to make sure that the capabilities of the distribution companies are improved. So it's treated as investment for the distribution companies.
Chia, sorry to cut you. Our time is very limited, and also wanted to respond to the last question. If we can keep our answers quite succinct, we might be able to
I think Roman's question speaks to the issue of the inconsistencies that happens in the sector, and also the pressure that sometimes government cannot resist in terms of doing what is right. The privatization was set on certain premise that the core investor are going to run the disco, and government shares would, after a period of time, would be privatized. If government has the responsibility and the right to invest and to provide power to anybody in the country, that is the prerogative of government. But then, in doing this thing, we have to understand who is going to bear the burden and who is going to bear the cost. If government wants to do anything, they could provide power, but that is part of their cost. But to come and say you want to do it and then you now put it as equity investment without any consultation in terms of the appropriateness of the investment, where do you do the investment, how do you procure the services, whether it makes sense to the disco or not, and that has not happened, and then you put it, that is one of those things that create a lot of problem.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we've got time for maybe one more question and then some closing remarks. The lady there.
My name is Bumi Fayok. I'm a partner with the law firm of Alukwano Ibode. I'd like to take the government up. You mentioned that the government is looking after the welfare of the people of Nigeria, and that's why it wants to make sure that the tariff is kept low. Right now, the people in Nigeria do not have power, and they're basically providing their own power at a very expensive rate. They have to buy generators, expensive diesel, so they actually are paying a huge amount for power. So there seems to be some sort of a disconnect somewhere. I'd like you to address that issue, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Yes, I agree with you, but you have to also understand even the MITO 2.1 that is in place now, there are some people who are challenging it in the court. So they are saying the cost is very high. That is the belief. So that tells you that there's no consensus on the ground that the tariff, even the current tariff that we have, there's a challenge on it, you know it. So these are the issues. So I didn't get Mundaka very well, actually. He talked about the treatment of the investment of government. We have not reached that level, even when he was talking. We have not reached that. What is on place now, there's a willingness. There's a willingness on the side of the government to invest. Treatment of the investment, apart from the one of NIPP, which has already been done, the one of the government, we have not concluded. We are still waiting for NAC. NAC is actually going to talk to you because, that investment that the government will, it can either be treated as shareholder loan or it can be treated as a capitalization of that investment. But the reality of the matter is that that is going to be cheap money for you, which is not going to have much interest rates, and the method how it's going to be treated has not been concluded. But, Madam, the reality of the matter is that, yes, people are generating electricity very costly, and several of the companies are also spending a lot of money to generate electricity. But the question is that still, if you look at even by a study that is done recently, the global of West Africa, we are the most costly in terms of electricity in the world. So it's not a lie that if we again translate this 60% losses again to the people, it will still go up. So even the MD of Kaduna Disco, we have discussed with him about the feasibility of the tariff just about a day ago. And he agreed with me that the issue of affordability is also an issue. It's very, very key. So that is what we are working. The good thing that is happening now is that, unlike before, when there's no consensus on how to resolve the issue, now there's some level of understanding. The legislators and the government are agreeing that let's move forward and see if we are to support the disco, let's support them. That is what is the key, and that is what is important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is any other members of the panel got any comments to the lady's question? No? And we have another question. Thank you, sir.
Yes, hello. Rafael Tillo from NG. Question about the off-grid solution, and specifically mini-grids and solar home systems. There was a slide showing that 98 million people have no access to electricity, most of them in rural areas. So my question to the panel is, what is your vision, medium-term, long-term, for mini-grids and solar home system? How many people could receive electricity with this solution, and what role for private investor with these solutions? Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, mini-grids, what's the role?
Thank you. Okay, so you asked about mini-grids and solar home systems. I'll start off with the solar home systems. There was an initiative called Beyond the Grid, which was launched out of the Office of the Vice President, implemented by the Niger Delta Power Holdings Company. The plan was to deploy 1 million solar home systems to different locations around the country. 20,000 have already been deployed to 4 or 5 different villages in the country, and the success rate is very high. I think over 98% of the people using them are happy with the equipment, and they're paying for it. So the plan is ongoing now to roll out up to 1 million. Now for mini-grids, the World Bank is supporting the REA, Rural Education Agency, to identify, I believe, over 100,000 different locations around the country that will use mini-grids. As you know, the communities that require mini-grids are slightly different from solar home systems. The ones that require mini-grids are probably a bit more clustered, and you can probably like a farming community where they're more economically viable. Solar home systems are for usually lower income and lower consumption communities. So back to the mini-grids now. The work is ongoing. I believe the locations have been identified. There's software, the data is going to be inputted, right? And then private investors can now go into that software, essentially bid, put in a tender for a solution they're proposing for each location you select. And the process will go through, and it's fully monitored by the World Bank. And then you get selected to provide mini-grid for the community. The IRA is implementing it.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I think we are running out of time. Valeria, do we have any more time at all?
I would say yes, just 5 minutes. One last question and then closing remarks.
Okay. Thank you.
My name is Nicholas Okafo, I'm the head of the Energy Practice Group in Udodoma and Belosage. And my question is on tariff again, because we know that some off-grid establishments are collecting more than 100 naira, some are collecting as much as 120, and people are paying. So how soon can the government actually review the tariff? Because a lot of people are not believing that people cannot pay. It is just that governments are using politics over business. How soon can a realistic tariff be released in the market? Thank you.
And cost-effective tariffs.
Yeah, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we don't have a regulator here that can give you precisely the answer. But the reality of the matter is that a window is also provided under the eligible customer regulation for those people who are willing to pay more for a better service. That is the purpose of the eligible customer declaration that was done by the minister, consistent with the Power Sector Reform Act. And, but you see, the eligible customer cannot just be for everybody. If not, it will create a distortion, no distortion to the sector. And that's why it was pegged as 2,000 megawatt monthly. If your generation, meat is up to 2,000 megawatt, and you can be able to build the network for you to take the supply, then you are willing to pay high to pay the charges. Then you will be connected. And I can, as I'm speaking to you now, about 7 of these eligible customers has been signed. And those eligible customers are supplied through the eligible customer regulation, where all the parties that are involved actually signed, they also sign what we call liquidated damage, meaning there's penalty for non-performance. So if transmission failed to transmit, that transmission pay penalty. Where the distribution of system is involved, distribution company will also pay penalty. The generator that's generating, if it fails to generate, they pay penalty. We have signed 6 on the pilot basis and 7 on the pilot basis so far. So we are moving. It's not, we are not static. And also, what is important is that this kind of interaction is also very good. For me, since I became MD of TCN, this is the 3rd time I came to a workshop, because I feel that we don't have to talk, but we should work. Now, in the course of the consultation that I've done with many of you in the last few days, we are also going to reflect, and we tell the government that this is how people feel, so that we should change. But the good thing is that they are listening. That is what is important now. They are listening. Thank you. Okay,
thank you very much. We have one final question, and I'm afraid it has to be the very final question. Thank you, sir.
Hello, everyone. It's not a question, actually, just to add to what Mukhtar said. My name is Sanusi Ohiare. I'm the Executive Director of the Rural Electrification Fund of Nigeria. And just to clarify your question, it speaks to the opportunities in the off-grid space in Nigeria. And we're looking at, within the next 5 years, to deploy at least between 8,000 to 10,000 mini-grids across the country. We've done extensive studies with GIZ and the Rocky Mountain Institute, and we see that we have that potential. We're currently spending about $15 billion annually on just buying diesel generators and trying to fuel them. And we see an alternative opportunity in solar home systems and mini-grids of about $9.3 billion if we wanted to switch to the alternative of solar. So we are trying to see how we can bring more people into the space. We have various incentives. The mini-grid regulation, like Mukhtar spoke to earlier, is there. We also have the Rural Electrification Fund, who is there to provide some sort of grants and concessionary loans and technical support to private developers coming in. And the market is big, the opportunities are huge, and we're inviting all of you to come to Nigeria to try and see how we can work together and explore this market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and we're going to have to bring the panel to a close. Unfortunately, there's so many more questions, so many more points that we would like to discuss today, but unfortunately we've run out of time. In the interest of time, I'd like to thank the panelists for their contributions. I'd like to thank the audience for their contributions also, and I'd like to invite you to have an enjoyable lunch. Thanks to anything. Thank you.